Good afternoon.
All right, good. That sounds pretty weak.
Good afternoon, LD.
That sounds good. Let's be live in here. Good. My name is Lieutenant Woodrow McCarthy, Moss Point Fire Department. Got 11 years in service here. I currently reside in the city of Moss Point and currently on beach here. Today's class will be dealing with the ERG. And we know that sometimes when you're out of one-on-one, some things just become relaxed, you don't think about it too much. But we're going to be reviewing the ERG book today, dealing with the hazmat, because it's easy to overlook, and especially when you're not a hazmat tech or into the chemistry part of the fire service, you can get, relaxed at it. But you got to remember, anything can happen at any given time in your city, in this city. So we want to be ready for it. So with that being said, we're going to go to some slides as a little mild refresher to you that are in, if you're a seasoned firefighter or if you're just got out of one-on-one, all of this should be very refreshing to you and should be familiar to you. So with that being said, we're going to move on and go forward. Firsthand, the 2016 Emergency Response Guide, better known as the ERG 2016, was developed by TC, Transport Canada. Second, the United States of U.S. Department of Transportation was better known as DOT. We know who DOT is. As well, the Secretariat of Transportation and Communications of Mexico, SCT. And this, I learned this as well on the last bullet point here, used by firefighters, police, and other agencies or service personnel who may be the first to arrive on the scene of a transportation incident involving dangerous goods. And we know that, real briefly, that a lot of times highway patrol will make it to the accident before we do. Any other agents can make it there before we do. So it is very crucial that they know how to use this as well. But being that we're doing this with our department today, just a refresher for what we're doing. The application of the ERG, primarily a guide to aid first responders in quickly identifying the specific or generic hazards of the materials involved in the incident and protecting themselves and the general public during the initial response phase of the incident. Secondly, assist first responders in making initial decisions upon arriving at the scene of a dangerous good incident. Moving on, limitation of the ERG. It should not be considered as a substitute for emergency response training, knowledge, or sound judgment. Does not address all possible circumstances that may be associated with a dangerous goods incident. Designed for use at a dangerous good incident occurring on highway or railroad. Limited value in its application at a fixed facility. Let's deal with NFPA 704. Listed materials. It incorporates dangerous goods lists from the most recent United Nations. Recommendations as well as from the other international and national regulations. So just a brief with that, I'm going to hand the ERG book around for you to look at it while we go some things out of the information concerning the book. And these are key things that we got to keep in mind. You don't want to ever roll up on something not knowing what to do. And if time permits, I will share some incident when I was at my time at the academy that was shared to us by some of the instructors there. I can get a hand here. The biggest, good, everyone else has the book. Just a couple of points that we can think of, and this is not to take place of any training, to become familiar with this. So just remember this, the ERG is a preliminary guide of action or action guide, and is useful during the 10 to 15 minutes of an incident. Meaning, when you get on scene, if you got the binoculars or whatever your distance is, That's that 10 to 15 minutes time frame. It's not to say, okay, we can do this, that, and the third, to go over our bounds. So this one we call DEQ, we call other agencies that deal with whatever we're dealing with. So just remember, it's just only just for 10 to 15 minutes. Not try to orchestrate and handle the whole incident. Getting into the pages of the ERG book and helping us understand where we are. The yellow section is where you see the UN number. And of course, it deals with the chemicals in this section are listed in numerical orders. And that's if you got a number on it, if you can visualize a number, you can call that number in and say, okay, this is what I got. Real briefly, moving on to the second section. The blue section, in it, these chemicals that we're dealing with, they're in alphabetical order. So we can also just know that it may be something you can barely make out. So just once you get some basic information, you got a benchmark on how to deal with it, what to call in to the other authorities or the other agencies coming in to assist us. The orange section, it deals with what action we're going to take to deal with what's been spilled. Of course, we know we don't want to put something on that that's water resistant that could cause us problem or anything that could be bad for us. So it tells us how to deal with these things in the orange section of the book. All right, and lastly, and one of the most important one is the green section. The green section, if it shows up in the green section, it is extremely volatile. It is extremely dangerous. So we have to take extra care when we go into the books in terms of when something comes up in the green section. So with that being said, just want to go back to one-on-one. And I learned this when I was at the academy. You know, one of the instructors tells us that you can have a stack of certifications this thick. But the thing that will save your life the most is going back to one-on-one in your training. I mean, all that's good, that's really good. But just remember this. The firefighter should always attempt to identify hazardous material for more than one source. The National ERG book is only a source and should not be used exclusively. In other words, we got to seek information. I think there's Cameo out there, there's Chemtrek. We can call these people and get what we need to get. All right. Also, this is a statistical thing on stats-wise. Over 4 billion tons of hazardous material are shipped annually by land, sea, air, and rail. When it's not possible to know each and every hazardous material by name or hazard class, it is possible to identify many and more common hazardous materials by understanding the available identification system and utilizing other methods to identify present hazardous material. Properly identifying the hazardous material is the first step in a safe, successful response, and that is every whit true. Because if you don't know what you're fighting, you can't fight it properly. You hurt yourself and get somebody else hurt. So just remember, the thing is with the fire service is safety, and above all, safety is for ourselves first. One of our BCs here now often say, we didn't create the problem. We're going there to help the problem. So with that being said, hope this will help you out a little bit today, as in refreshing yourself concerning your ERG book, and hoping that you will pick it up in the end. And I want to say this as well. We're not invincible, but we are dispendable. And we don't want to take any chances, you know. And let me say this, and you can get ready for Q&A if questions you may have. One of the instructors when I was we were doing HAB, of course, when I was at the academy over 10 years ago, had an incident up in Jackson, and this one of the chief or whatever title he was at the time, they had a spill out there on one of the interstates, and he walks up, something dripping from under the tank or whatever it was. So he walks up and do this, and he touches it. Oh, it's this, it's that. And as they watched him when he was going back, it's not funny, but when he was going back to his truck, His legs got a little bit rubberish, you know, and had to rush him to the hospital. Now, was that a sound decision, or was that, well, I don't have to ask that. We know that wasn't too sound a decision to do that. So, also, the instructor that was over us at the time, he shared an incident with us, and it was kind of heart-touching. One of the chief, he's a young guy, had made chief at Pearl. Had a call one morning. Make a long story short, called the truck. They went through a cloud. It was called in as smoke. Whenever the public sees smoke, they're going to think fire. It wasn't fire. It was a chlorine cloud. Walked through it. Long story short, at that time, had 30% use of his lungs. So we got to be, careful what we do. So that ends my part of the class for today. I'll open up now for questions. Yes, sir.
The green section, isn't it also for materials that react with water?
Absolutely. Because it's anything that's volatile, yeah, and that is whatever it is. Whatever it is in there that comes up, I mean, it's a red flag for us to stay at a distance from it until proper authorities get there to deal with it. Lieutenant Matt?
How's that good?
Oh, good. Okay. All right, thank you. Chief Posey.
You can also, nowadays, you only upgrade these books about every 4 years, but you can actually download the app on your phone, and that's updated continuously. So most of this book, there's not much change in it every 4 years, but at least you have the app on your phone, and you can pull up the same information.